we scheduled this for 1 hour. I want to get moving. I just want to do a very quick introduction. The first thing that I want to note is we are really putting a focus this year on resilience and coming out with various opportunities to bring resilience to our membership. This has all been based on the 5 pillars, which Tim himself was the leader in developing for us. So this evening, we're very fortunate to have with us Chaplain Major Anna Mae Taubeneck. She's going to present on the 5 pillars. And Chaplain Taubeneck is a vet center counselor, therapeutic chaplain. So we're really privileged to have her as our guest speaker this evening. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to her at this time. It's yours, Anna Mae. Thank you for doing this for us.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. And it's wonderful to serve alongside all these fantastic volunteers in the Civil Air Patrol. I'm just going to share my screen, and I'm working with multiple screens, so forgive me if I have a little snafu, which I pray not. Let me know, give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. It says 5 pillars of wellness and resilience. If I see a thumbs up.
Excellent. It's there.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as you can see, this is a pamphlet 80-4 that was published in 2020. And this pamphlet was the entire 5 pillars of wellness and resilience actually were adopted in 2018 during the National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. This was in an effort to promote living in wellness and having good habits that allow members to call on those resources, because that's what gives us strength to be able to continue and have the strength and the resilience to maintain during times of stress. So there were several events, of course, that took place. There were personal crises that sort of led to this. And that's the reason that the National Commander created initially a task force with representatives. And the representatives came from like operations, cadet programs, chaplaincy, health services, and also the peer support program. And they all made suggestions in a way that they wanted to move forward. And the idea was excelling in service to, and that being the most important asset, of course, is the members of Civil Air Patrol. So the leadership, as I mentioned, they adopted this model, and it's a very comprehensive model. And it's based on Major General Mark Smith. That was his quote there. The 5 pillars are mind, body, relationships, spirit, and family. And they represent the focus areas that contribute to our personal level of wellness. And this personal wellness enables us to operate at our best, sustaining us during times of stress and making us resilient to the difficulties of life. And this helps us to be successful as CAPP volunteer airmen. It also helps us, of course, in all of our life, but the focus, of course, here was Civil Air Patrol. As you know, we have a very, very diverse population in Civil Air Patrol, not only in racial, ethnic, and age, and gender, and all of those things in the entire caveat. And of course, every person is going to have something different that will define what makes up each of the pillars that we're going to be discussing. But there are some habits for each of those that we're going to be talking about tonight that will help the person depending on where they're coming from, their particular culture, their particular traditions, that can help them to be consistent throughout their life. And so basically, this pamphlet was published as a way to introduce the CAPP leadership, people who are training in Civil Air Patrol, and also all the airmen, both cadets and senior members, about this model. And then it defines it, and it provides some really practical applications on how to support our membership. This is the visual model, and the visual model has changed over time. As you can see, if we were to start from the bottom of the model going upwards, we would begin with a foundation. And then, of course, we have the pillars, and then we have what's considered the capstone, right? And so we're going to be breaking this entire model down, but basically it focuses on those 5 pillars as the essence of what we're trying to convey, which is the mind, body, relationship, spirit, and family. And what we ask of you, is we need to do self-assessments of how we are doing. How am I standing up to the pressures that I'm facing in my life, right? How am I coping, right? Am I struggling? And if so, what might I be able to do to regain some healthy perspective? And one way to think about that is to look at these 5 pillars and say, okay, where am I out of balance perhaps with these, right? So as Civil Air Patrol says, these are sources of strength, right? To gain and maintain our resiliency, not just in times of stress, but every day. When they become habits, then when we're in times of stress, it becomes automatic for us to use those skills. What Civil Air Patrol hoped is that this particular model, that everybody should know it visually, should be able to take a pen and paper and to be able to draw the model. And I have a really fun little game at the very end, something that you can take back to your units as a way to kind of promote that. The other thing that we want is not just to be able to visually write it, draw the image, but to be able to actually recite what the pillars are and to know what they mean. What do they represent? So as you can see at the bottom of the pillar under the foundation piece, there's a lot of words down there. We're going to be taking a look at these things. But we're going to start by saying, okay, just like the pilots, before they go flying, they have to do a check, right? Everybody has to do a check. There's a checklist that they have to go through. And it's the same idea when it comes to our personal resiliency. We can think of this as a self-check. So every CAPP member should be able to conduct a self-check. And that's going to determine our fitness, both within the 5 pillars of wellness and resiliency, but also in terms of our ability to actually function in the mission or at the training or wherever it is, right? So these are the 2 questions that you'll see that are going to show up in this training as we're moving along. What am I doing now that supports this pillar, whether in CAPP, Civil Air Patrol, or in my personal life? And then what new commitment can I make to work towards excellence in this pillar? Okay. And just like many other organizations, Civil Air Patrol uses the SMART goals, and those are very clear, challenging, very achievable, something that's realistic. So when we're looking at those pillars, we can actually create SMART goals for each of those pillars. And then because of the way the SMART goals are designed, we can go back and see, are we meeting these goals or not? And then we can continue to do that self-check process and giving ourselves honest feedback about how we're doing and where do we need to make adjustments. So here we are. Here's the very first pillar that we're going to be looking at. And you can see on the side of the slide, I've included that self-check, the 2 questions, and that's going to show up on every single slide as we're reviewing the content. You'll notice at the very bottom of the page, it's got at the very bottom in blue, it has volunteers serving America's communities, right? Saving lives and shaping futures. My vision is terrible. And then underneath it says Civil Air Patrol 5 pillars of wellness and resiliency. It's showing the 1 pillar of mind. And you'll notice that underneath that, it shows words: emotionally aware, learn, adaptability, and decision making. Between the mind and those words is the term volunteers. And then above the mind, we have a Civil Air Patrol member living in wellness and resiliency. Then we have above that, serving America's communities. Above that, saving lives. And above that, shaping futures. So all airmen, whether cadets or senior members, were all expected to look for our mental strengths, during times of difficulty and stress. And so the words that are underneath the mind, let's begin with emotional awareness, right? This is very important for every single member of Civil Air Patrol. Cadets need to know what they're feeling, and they need to practice responding correctly to those emotions. And that's something that we're learning as we're growing up. Seniors also need to be aware of their feelings. And the reason is because they're important indicators of our stress, right? Learn. So learning is important for everyone, right? Being a lifelong learner is one of the most important factors to success in whatever endeavor you choose. Civil Air Patrol, the cadets and seniors can experience and learn skills not available elsewhere. So it's a beautiful lifelong learning volunteer opportunity. As the member ages, of course, the knowledge that they acquire is going to allow them to understand situations, devise successful ways to move forward, and also to provide information to use that can serve others and themselves, right? The adaptability. Adaptability supports the member during changing life situations, right? Change. Okay, so any change, whether it's good or bad, elicits a response. So there's negative stress and there's positive stress, right? Because change just elicits a type of stress, right? So having the ability to let things go, though, when they're not in our control, that's what makes, of course, life better in a stressful situation. Being adaptable. Decision-making. This is an important skill for leadership, both in the dynamic world of emergency services and also in cadet programs, right? During stress and crisis, maintaining the ability to make decisions is very essential. And making a decision, any decision can begin the journey back to wellness. So again, the self-check, right? As I begin my day and I'm approaching going to volunteer in Civil Air Patrol or my entire life, really, I'm going to perform a self-check to determine what is my fitness when it comes to being emotionally aware. How am I doing emotionally? Am I engaged in lifelong learning? Am I adaptable in circumstances where there's things that are in and out of my control? And how is my decision-making functioning, right? So this is a really critical item on the checklist, right? Like a pilot who's going to fly has some items on the checklist that are considered to be critical, that if they don't meet the standard, they can't fly, right? If the aircraft has maintenance issues of a certain type, they can't fly. It's critical. It's the same thing for human beings. It's just we don't tend to look at ourselves that way. We don't say, well, if I'm not emotionally well, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to keep going. Sort of that, got to keep going until I drop. But here, what we're saying with this resiliency model is that we need to be aware of our feelings because they're really important indicators of stress. And we really need to be able to focus on, especially, when volunteering with Civil Air Patrol, that we're arriving with a positive attitude and that we're able to let go if something really isn't in our control. I'm moving over now to the second pillar, which is body. And as you can see, it's the same setup again. We have the self-check questions on the side. We also have the slogan on the bottom. And then we have words under the volunteers, and we have body. We still have the same top. And again, you'll notice where it says perform a self-check to determine fitness. You notice again, this is critical, both from a rest and sleep perspective, but also from a nutritional perspective. So quite honestly, while every pillar in the model is a source of personal strength, it's actually the pillar of body that provides the literal strength, right? The literal strength to strive, right? Or to thrive. So we have 4 words underneath the word body. We have fitness. Of course, we all know about that. And it's achieved, by exercise, which is important for stress reduction. And it also helps us to feel better about ourselves. And that's going to be individual and based on an individual's limitations or interests. But continually being able to move our bodies in some form or other is very important for the circulation. It gets oxygen to the brain, and it's very good for our health. Rest and sleep are critical. Everyone knows there are lots of experts out there that consider this to be the most important source of strength for all of the emphasis areas, that if we are sleep deprived, it is going to impact our body the way it functions, it's going to impact our mind the way it functions, and it's going to impact our relationships. It's going to impact everything in our life. It impacts our decision making. There's actual science that is, how does this affect the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of our decision making is taking place. So getting good rest and sleep is important. And sometimes people need to have medical assistance with that. Nutrition is critical for our growth. That's the next thing on that list. And it's important at every stage in our life. And it will change at different times in our life, depending on what age we are, what we're able to eat, what we're not able to eat. But eating well overall, eating from all of the different food groups overall, is what gives the nutrients to our body to be able to function properly. Recreation, that's play. I'll often ask people, what do you do for fun? What do you do for fun, right? This is important for everyone. And while Civil Air Patrol itself might be your place of fun, right? We also have to take time for ourselves, right? Maybe we have work, we have Civil Air Patrol, we have other responsibilities, family, other activities that we're involved in. It's really important, though, that every single member in Civil Air Patrol, everybody, every human, must be given and must take time for themselves. So again, I'm about to approach a mission. I'm about to approach a training exercise. I've got to perform a self-check to determine my fitness to participate in this activity. Have I had enough sleep? Have I had enough rest? Have I eaten properly? And if not, I need to stop and take care of that. I need to be able to say, you know what, I'm actually too tired to be here today. It would be safer for everybody actually if I go home. Or I need to pause right now and I need to eat and take care of myself. These are very critical. The next pillar is the pillar of relationships. And again, on the slide, we have the self-check with the 2 questions. And we have 2 areas that are critical under this particular pillar. One is communication and the other is social support. And we'll talk about that in a moment. You also see there are words underneath: communication, connectedness, social support, and teamwork. So, Civil Air Patrol is people-based, right? We're we're out there and we're doing search and rescue, we're doing disaster relief, we're doing all these missions, but we're working together. There's all kinds of relationships involved. And those relationships, in order to perform all those trainings and all those missions, depends on communication. It depends on our connectedness, support, and it depends on our teamwork. So within a mission, no one is a loner, right? We all need to be able to operate together. So social support is critical, essentially, then, to all of our members. Everyone needs to be a wingman. And that's something, of course, that we know. We teach that to the cadets. We use that phrase a lot. And it's something that, as soon as somebody joins CAP, it's, something that we begin teaching them about. It's in the level 1 coursework about, being a wingman. What does that mean as a cadet? What does that mean as a senior member? And that's something that we retain. It's something that we learn about, but it's something that, in a sense, you could think of it as we're sort of issued this wingman badge, and we retain that for the entire time that we're in Civil Air Patrol. So when we look at communication, right, we know that can only happen when people individually reach out to each other, right? The ability to share what we've gleaned, maybe by our personal emotional awareness, right? That might be a critical skill, right? Maybe I can see that, and maybe I know somebody is grieving something, and maybe I don't want to say directly, gee, did you perform a self-check? Maybe you shouldn't be here, but I could certainly say, I've had some experiences in my own life, and when I've been experiencing this type of an emotional state, I recognize for myself, right, that I need to maybe step aside for take care of myself. Right? There's different ways that we can kind of communicate with people, but basically the idea is that we communicate and we share, with each other about our emotional awareness, because it's such a critical skill, and that's communication is that also that critical skill. And then, we have to trust each other. We have to have that connectedness with this ability to trust others in a way that lets them see our needs and concerns, right? It's got to be a give and take. And we all need at least, one person in our life that we know that we can reach out to, somebody that we can receive attention from, support when we're in a weak position or in a crisis. Now, for some people, that might be their partner, that might be a family member, or it might be a friend. It might be a professional, a counselor or a therapist. It might be a faith leader. Regardless of who it is, it's important that we all have one. And teamwork, of course, is the glue, right? It's the glue that allows all of the tasks and the missions that we do in Civil Air Patrol to be accomplished, right? And not just accomplished, but accomplished in an efficient manner, right? So they say, there's no CAPP mission that wouldn't achieve better results with additional eyes to watch and hands to help, right? And, so the more we have and the more we work together, the better we are as a team. So again, a self-check. I'm coming to a mission. I'm about to go to a training. And where am I in terms of my relationships? If my most dearest family member is critically ill, perhaps my focus today is being at home, taking care of that person. If if I have a loved one in the hospital, maybe that's where I need to be, right? If I just had a big blowout argument with somebody before I arrived to the mission or I arrived to the training, and I'm still occupied emotionally with that, right? That's where, doing that self-check, where am I with this conflict? And how is it impacting me? How's it impacting me emotionally? How's it impacting my body? Am I really here? Am I really present to this mission, to this training? Because that's going to be very important in terms of my performance and for safety reasons as well. So when we have that wingman relationship with somebody else, and which is what we have with every single Civil Air Patrol member, is that we're looking out for each other, and kind of listening to what's going on in people's lives, and being there maybe as a personal support, like I would be as a chaplain, so that they could, have me, somebody to speak with, but also, another member just lending a shoulder or saying, hey, I can see, how upset you are about something that just went on, it's okay if you go home, and, there's going to be another mission. There's going to be another training. There's going to be another day, right? It's critical. We wouldn't fly the plane if it were broken, right? And so we kind of do the same thing for ourselves. The next pillar is the pillar spirit. And again, you can see I've got the self-check questions. And the critical components in this one are values and purpose. And the words underneath the pillar are values, perseverance, perspective, and purpose. So values are really important because values are, as we've got the core values for Civil Air Patrol. These are shared values that we have in common in this organization. We have our personal values, those values define what someone stands for, right? So one of the things that we begin teaching new members in Civil Air Patrol, we teach cadets, both in the character development forums and also in the senior member character development forums, if you ever have an opportunity to do that, is one of the most important things that members can do is to create a set of values that they'll commit to live with by no matter what happens. All right. So no matter what happens, I'm going to have integrity. No matter what happens, I'm going to be respectful. Right. And these values are defining what the conduct, my conduct is, and what the behaviors are that are most important to our self-identity. And it's the foundation of our moral code of conduct. It's kind of like saying it's the line in the sand of where I won't cross, right? Perseverance. Sometimes that's referred to, especially in Civil Air Patrol, as grit. We've heard where there are some character development forums on grit, right? And in the military as well. It's a sought after quality, especially in perhaps in some of the civilian sectors as well. But basically, when we're looking for qualities by those looking for help and who are looking for employees, somebody who doesn't give up, right? And then there's perspective. Well, what is a member's perspective, right? That's going to be different for every single person. And when change happens in their life, is it the end? Or is this like a new door that's about to be opened, right? That's a perspective that one takes. Like when there's some kind of change that happens, how do they approach that? How do they look at that? Oh my God, changes happen. It's the end of the world, the end of everything, or, oh, here's a new door, something new is about to happen, right? So our hardships that they encounter, is their perspective that a hardship is a curse, or is their perspective that it's a chance to grow, right? So how Civil Air Patrol members view difficulty and stress, along with their willingness to reach out for help, can determine how successfully they weather whatever the issue is. Then there's purpose. Everybody needs meaning and purpose to their life. And there are different ways that people obtain that or find that in their lives. And there's something that they call the perennial questions, right? These are the 5 top questions that people will ask. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? How shall I live? And why? Why? These questions are seeking to know, what meaning and purpose my life has. And we're constantly evaluating that, reassessing that as change occurs in our life. As we walk through different seasons in our life, how a teenager might answer that versus somebody who just retired may be very, very different, right? Each of us, depending on the season of our life, we will be looking for different meaning and purpose for that context. But it's important for all of us to have that sense of purpose. And that's one reason that some people volunteer in Civil Air Patrol, right? Because it gives them a sense of purpose, volunteering. And it's a very, very worthy endeavor, because we're really adding to our community, state, and nation. So again, I am approaching a mission, I'm approaching a training, I've got to do my self-check, right? How am I doing on this? What am I doing now in my life that supports this pillar, whether it's in CAPP or my personal life? And if Civil Air Patrol isn't what's giving me purpose, and I'm just going through the motion, I might need to ask myself, well, what new commitment can I make toward working towards excellence in this pillar, right? So for some people, I love the word values, because not everybody comes from any particular kind of faith. We have people in Civil Air Patrol that have very strong faith communities, strong beliefs, etc. But we also have like a lot of scientists who don't believe in anything from a faith tradition, but like, who are physicists and really could explain the, astronomy to us, or, different things like that. So we have people from all walks of life, but what we all have in common, regardless of that, is that we all have values. And it's something that we stand for, the conduct, our behaviors, and it can be influenced by a number of factors externally. It can be Civil Air Patrol, it can be, we might have learned them through our family systems, our communities, our schools, military, law. They come from all different places, but it's the foundation of our moral code of conduct. Then we have the pillar of family. And again, there's a couple of critical items on that checklist, that self-checklist. Critical. that we have a group of people where one finds the most comfort, nurturing, and emotional support. And it's critical that family is taken care of first. We'll take a look at what family means. Under the pillar, we have identity, affection, legacy, and priority. Now, as a volunteer organization, Civil Air Patrol, with a large youth program, obviously there's no pillar, or we believe there's no pillar more important to the success of all the missions than the pillar of family. Well, okay, so the definition of family can be unique to every individual, and I really want to stress that, right? It is critical that there exists a pillar that is the basis for nurturing. How one defines family is going to be different for different people. For cadets, as it is for all youth, family is usually the source of their values. It's their culture, their commitment to service, right? And the cadet program only has its cadets, a few hours every week? So for most cadets, families where the youngest members go for most of their needs, right, in all of the pillars. So for the cadets, right, having a robust partnership with cadet parents is critical. It's critical to the success of this CAP mission. There are many testimonials of cadets' greatest impact actually being made by the cadet program itself and not their biological families. So let's say, for the purposes of this resilience and wellness training, family is the group of people where one finds the most comfort, nurturing, and emotional support. Now, Civil Air Patrol senior members might have a different perspective on family. Like all responders, if one's family is not taken care of first, well, there is a degraded mission effectiveness, right? Because without the support of families, the volunteer service wouldn't get done. So every senior member needs to ensure that their priorities are to their family first so that they can serve effectively, right? And I talked a little bit about that before. So, emergencies, they call us. We go out sometimes at inconvenient times. This is why it's so important for us to have a history of positive experiences with our families to allow for those occasional events that mandates a sacrifice. Right? And then all the units, we need to acknowledge that this critical support family is what makes the missions possible. We need to be really vocal about that. For airmen coming into Civil Air Patrol, it's through their families that they get their first sense of identity, and then they're moving into something bigger than themselves as they come into Civil Air Patrol. Right? So we've got the families, which are the wells of nurture and affection, comfort, and appropriate touch is still an important healer, right? But we're very cautious about that here in Civil Air Patrol, right? So as we're serving and as the generations go by, there's going to be people who come and go through Civil Air Patrol. There's going to be people who spend a lifetime in Civil Air Patrol. And maybe then their kids come into Civil Air Patrol, and then their grandkids come into Civil Air Patrol. And so it's it establishes a legacy. It goes beyond a single lifetime through the family relationships. It's important that we all look at family as being the lifeblood of all of our activities and missions, because it's what makes it possible for us to come. So again, I'm approaching a mission, I'm going to a training, I've got to do a self-check, right? Is my family okay? Can I be here without my mind being back home, being occupied with what's going on with my family? Or am I able to be present here, and which would allow me to be safe and everyone else safe around me because my full attention is here, right? If not, it's okay to go home, to go take care of the people who are important to me. That's okay, because they come first. There'll be another mission. There'll be another training, right? We want to make sure that we have mission effectiveness, and one way to do that, to be able to serve effectively, is to be well and to be able to be present, because we're not preoccupied with the problem. Okay, so this all was born out of the suicide prevention, right? It was during the National Character Development Lessons in September 2018. The goal at that time was to present the 5 pillars model to all the cadets. And it was like a toolkit of resources that they could draw on during times of stress and crisis. And I remember when that came out, I remember teaching it. Each cadet was asked at that time to discuss with their peers ways that Civil Patrol or other activities in their life were providing for or supporting the emphasis areas of each of those 5 pillars. And then the cadets had to write down at least one new activity that they would commit to doing within each pillar. And I remember doing that exercise with them and writing, my own down as well with them, right? And then we shared within the group, right? The cadets shared aloud what it was that they had written down. I shared what it was that I had written down. And by doing that, we established this, sense of accountability for each other. And then the idea was that we were going to check in periodically with each other. And how are we doing on that? If are we meeting our own standard, or do we need to modify it? Do we need to make some adjustments, right? This whole program, this whole 5 pillars of wellness and resiliency is about our overall general wellness and health, right? And this is a big, this is not just a big thing in Civil Patrol. This is, all over the world. This is in businesses. This is in the federal government, state, local. Everybody is promoting this concept of general wellness and health. And the reason for that, there was a lot of research that was done that focusing on wellness rather than like on recovery from something, for instance, right? That sort of the prevention model, rather than just reacting to something that took place and, oh my goodness, now I've got to do X, Y, Z to prevent this from happening again. The idea was, well, what can I do now that would be working on prevention so that potentially those things wouldn't occur? And so like there's a list here, right? Here's some benefits, right, of doing some of these things. Promoting good behaviors, right, in members. And they focus on, they'll say, oh, especially cadets, because they're at the beginning of their life. So they're going to be gaining lifetime benefits, right? It was also to decrease behaviors that are considered risky and support the drug demand reduction goals, right? In other words, don't use drugs, right? Decreasing costs of health for membership. That if we take care of our bodies, if we take care of our minds, if we take care of all of those areas, potentially I mean, genetically, there's always things that happen. There's always accidents that happen, things like that. But generally, we can have overall better health. And as a result, because we're feeling better, that improves our available time to volunteer, right? And when we're doing something, we can be more productive because we feel better. And as a result, we get to build and maintain the member and the unit morale and the teamwork. So I've been talking about values, and of course, the 4 core values of Civil Patrol are also expressed in these 5 pillars in the model. So if we look at the first core value, which is integrity, right? Integrity is having a solid bedrock of personal standards, right? That define our conduct, our behaviors in every activity, in every relationship, whether it's in Civil Patrol or in our personal lives, right? This is a core value shown in the pillars of spirit. It's shown in the pillars of family. It focuses on our personal values and our identity, right? And then volunteer service, another core value of Civil Air Patrol, right? This value finds its home in the pillar of spirit, which focuses on values and purpose. The service is the reason that men and women, who were very courageous and patriotic, that they were originally created Civil Air Patrol in 1941, right? Then we have the core value of excellence, right? It's the quality that every single member can achieve when they're firmly supported by all of the 5 pillars in their life, right? When every individual is fully supported, Civil Air Patrol members together are best able to hold up and carry the missions of the organization. And then we have the core value of respect. That value is summarized in this diagram of the 5 pillars of wellness and resiliency, which shows the focus areas. That's those areas there on the bottom that provide the well-being to all the members. So when someone's pillar or someone's pillars are threatened, right, there's going to be a loss of that person's mental, physical, social, and spiritual family strength. That's just normal and natural. So we have to guard our words. We have to guard our actions to not damage another person's pillar. And that's where that respect comes in. So the 5 pillars of wellness and resiliency, it's a framework, it's a model, and it's suggested for all members of Civil Air Patrol. It's used to describe the skills needed to live in a position of personal excellence. And it's while living in that excellence that members are in the best place to be able to meet the demands of serving the missions of the organization and able to withstand any stress, both in those missions and in their own lives. So our goal is to be able to have every airman in Civil Air Patrol be able to recite the 5 pillars: mind, body, relationships, spirit, and family. Every member, cadet, senior member should be able to perform a self-check that determines their fitness in each of these pillars. And it's critical that every member knows where and how to get assistance if there's an area in their life that cannot be the source of strength during their crisis. It's only when every single member in Civil Air Patrol is strong and resilient that in Civil Air Patrol or any organization is in a position to truly be at its best. And for us in Civil Air Patrol, that's one Civil Air Patrol excelling in service for our nation and to our members. In the pamphlet, you'll find a list of other sources for information and resources. You have the Pillars of Wellness, a psychological health program from the National Guard Bureau, and there's a website that you can visit. There's 11 Skills, which is a wingman online comprehensive fitness training based out of the United States Air Force, and there's a website that you can go to. There's Resiliency, that's under the Civil Air Patrol Operations, and there's a website for that. Spiritual Resiliency under the Civil Air Patrol Chaplain Corps, there's a website for that. And then the 5 Pillars of Wellness and Resiliency, Civil Air Patrol, and the website for that. This is the bonus slide. This is the one that I added. This is something that I created. You know, they have these little things on the internet where you can make like a thought bubble, right? And you can add all kinds of words in the thought bubble. And so I kind of took all the words that are on the pillars themselves, and then the words that are under the pillars that I just went through with you. And instead of a thought bubble, the shape was an airplane. And I put all the words into that shape of the airplane, and then had a blank pillar model. And then I was doing this with the cadets. And then I said, okay, use the words that are on the aircraft to complete that 5 Pillars of Wellness and Resiliency diagram. And then sort of made it like a little competition. You know, first to complete the diagram wins, you know, maybe have a little candy or something, I don't know. But I did it also at a Regent staff, chaplains staff college with all the chaplains and CDIs as well, you know. And it's just a fun way to kind of approach it. And even people who have been working with the model for a long time, it took a little effort for us to, you know, get it all down there and in order. Because it's one thing when we look at it, it's another thing. Now we got to take pieces and put them back in there. So it was just another kind of way to reinforce the learning is really all that it was about. Okay, I have come to the end of my words. Are there any questions?
Before we start on the questions, Anna Mae, I just want to give a big shout out to you for what you're sharing with us this evening. And I think it is helpful for us as we relaunch. This is something that was meant when Chaplain Miner put this together with his team to be a part of something that is a part of who we are, understanding who we are. And in the relaunching, I want to thank you for your thoughts this evening. And the second thing that you've been alluding to that I want to bring up, because this has been very important in the Air Force in the last 3 years, is wingmanship is not just about what I'm supposed to do for other people. Wingmanship is about the ability to listen when I need to hear my wingman talking to me. And I just wanted to kind of make that little addition because you hinted so much at that in your comments. But I want to thank you. And we all, again, owe Chaplain Miner a huge thank you for a few years ago when his team put all of this together under his direction. So we're open for questions.
Can you repeat what you just said about wingmanship, please?
What I was talking about in wingmanship is very simply, I'm just going to do a thumbnail because this is actually a little bit longer thing. Wingmanship is in the military was perceived as something that I do for another person to have their back. It's now expanding into understanding that when I'm practicing wellness and resilience, I have the ability to hear when a wingman speaks to me, when they're trying to have my back. And I think that is one piece of the wingmanship that's important. The other piece of it also goes to what Anna Mae was talking about in her presentation. In the military, the idea is that wingmanship is a culture, not something that I do, which means that I'm not just a wingman on base. I'm not just a wingman in my unit. I am going to be a wingman when I'm in my community off base. It's who I am. It's not something that I'm simply expected to do. It's a culture. It's who I am. Does that help? Other questions or comments?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chaplain Morrison. It's Lieutenant Gant. You mentioned, excuse me, the relaunch of this. So what is the game plan for us to start reincorporating this program back into the squadron at the squadron level?
We are working, we have a new working relationship that was announced at National at the first Health Services Summit. And the Chaplain Corps, Health Services, and Safety are now engaging in an active collaboration because the three groups are concerned about the whole person. And part of that relaunching tonight is health service personnel were invited in because we need to spread the word and we don't have chaplains and CDIs in every place. We are also going to be launching resilience workshops, and at the same time, another thing which is coming down the road so that we all begin to develop a culture of awareness for resilience. The safety bulletin is also carrying an article or two from health each month. They renamed it to dispatch, and there'll be something from the Resilience Committee or the Chaplain Corps as a part of that. So this is something that is just beginning to ramp up for the year. And this relaunch is really important because we, in this group tonight, and as we run this again, we need to begin to take this back to our commands. We need to begin to take it back to our regions. And we need to help people bring this model that we have to life with everybody that we touch so that they see that as a part of it. Just as an example, in my old unit, they're going back the trifold that we had on this 5 pillars will be required to be in the cadets folder or notebook all the time. I think what we can do is when we are aware of this, the way Anna Mae was talking about, we can develop a habit of being able to reinforce aspects of this as we're encountering and working with cadets and seniors. Does that help?
For me, it gives me the large picture. Yeah, I guess a little bit more of the in the weeds is, you know, are we scheduling a day or a time, or are we going to come out? You mentioned the dispatch with the safety piece. We talked about, you know, having some kind of resiliency briefs each month. Is there any decisions on how we're going to implement any of that yet? Or if we're even still going down that path?
Yeah, when you're saying each month, what a plan is that we're working on, and we're just beginning the beta testing on it, is a video each month in the squadron that will be the end of the safety brief on resiliency. It'll be a 5-minute video. So that's in the works. We're doing the last steps in terms of getting that signed off. We're in the process of positioning things to be in place. So I can't give you a detailed plan at this moment. This was the first step, is launching it tonight, making people aware that we're going to cross over when it comes to wellness and resilience with health and safety. We need to carry that. We need to take that message into the organization, and we'll be doing more trainings like this. We'll be doing more follow-on programs, and we're going to depend upon people to from both of these groups to pick this up and keep this message up in front.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
The one thing I will say is safety is very big on this because they understand. And I think you can see that fairly obviously from what Anna Mae said tonight. This is an issue of safety. This is why there's so much a part of what we are doing. If we're practicing wellness and resilience and we have a healthy membership, that directly goes to safety.
There's a question in the chat, Chaplain Morrison. It says, would this replace safety briefings or CDI materials, or is this additional pieces we can put in place throughout the year as needed, warranted?
Okay, this is going to be, the videos would be a part of the safety brief time-wise, and it would be the safety officer who starts and ends the video, because we do not have either chaplain CDI or a health service officer in every squadron, but we do have a safety officer. So they become the ones that can turn the video on and off. The video, think of it as a design of, here's a mini TED Talk presented in a Budweiser entertaining type of fashion. No discussion, no lesson. The person will take their own takeaway from it, and that's something which all of us can reinforce during the course of a month, but there's no formal lesson or discussion that is tied to that.
Question.
We have a hand up, First Lieutenant Kelly Higdon.
Thank you. This is Kelly Higdon. Quick question. I see the need. We are a very cadet heavy squadron, but my question is sometimes good ideas can be kind of punitive. I kind of see, so for example, when a cadet is going up for promotion, maybe they're a little slow in promoting. Maybe they are trying to advance so quickly that they're losing sight of everything else. And as a character development instructor, I might feel very concerned about the overly ambitious cadet, like they're trying to forsake family, forsake homework, all of that because they're trying to be on a fast track. And that concerns me, that they're working on perfectionism. So I'm wondering how this is quantifiable. If I'm talking to a cadet who hasn't promoted in 3 years, and they look like they're not really interested, or maybe they're waning, but they're minors, they don't have really great control, they can't respond to missions per se. But I see kind of maybe a road to depression or something of that nature. How would you model a conversation, or how would that maybe look like a conversation of interest without necessarily coming down on this teenager for being overly ambitious or maybe becoming lethargic, without it feeling like it's a punitive, like they're being pulled in and they're in trouble now?
Well, this is a very complex question that you're asking, and it might even be beyond the scope of the 5 pillars specifically. The 5 pillars are not meant to be used in a punitive manner in any fashion. It's simply a reminder for all of us on maintaining balance in our lives. Now, there's going to be cadets and there's going to be senior members who do not have balance in their lives. That's a reality. It's not just the cadets. There are senior members who overextend themselves in a variety of ways, or who put emphasis in one area more than another. And so, and this, you mentioned the word depression, this becomes a larger discussion because there's such things as not feeling well, sadness, versus a clinical diagnosis, which is a medical diagnosis of depression, which is very significantly different. And And then that becomes a completely different conversation, right? And that's certainly where you're going to want to, you know, have family involved. You're going to, if you have a chaplain, you're going to want the chaplain involved. If you get the commander involved, if it's a cadet, this may be of a greater type of conversation to have. So I don't want to minimize your question in terms of the question itself is very important. But in terms of the 5 pillars, we're not looking at the resiliency program or the 5 pillars as a means of saying, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're out of balance. It's simply a reminder for all of us to be in balance and to characterize it similar, I think, in a way like the example I used of the airplane's not going to go up if it's not mechanically functioning properly. The pilot shouldn't be flying if they're not able to meet certain criteria. And it's kind of the same thing for the rest of us, is but sort of an approach, a perspective to take in life, as opposed to being used as a diagnostic tool or being used as a assessment or punitive type tool. Chaplain Morrison, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to take a look at is this is meant to be a understanding of how to maintain a balance. And this is for us, it can also, in a sense, be a tool that's light. I may see somebody struggling in an area, but it doesn't have to be clinical either, but I may be able to be helpful. And but this is really for us to understand what's involved in the whole person being in balance, for them to understand for themselves, and that they can also feel comfortable to speak to someone that they trust when they're feeling something. So, or we may open up a conversation with somebody by we observe it looks like they're in stress or anxiety, and we just can open it up and say, hey, you know, you having a good day? And see where they pick up on the questions. So, but if we're seeing something that's more clinical, we definitely need to be sure that that's dealt with in that format. We're actually over time at the moment. I think you brought up something that we need to be aware of, that this is a tool for balance, a tool for self-check, a tool that can also be guiding for us. And on the questions that we asked, that I heard earlier, this is, how do we take it? We take it by ourselves, integrating this into our own self, and by modeling it with the people that we are working with in our squadrons, groups, wings, and above. And it's going to be in that modeling that will have the larger impact. So that's what I'd kind of like to end on that one. There was a question in the chat, and I think I know the answer, but Anime, they were asking if this can be available to them, your PowerPoint. I think you're on mute.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll send it to Chaplain Morrison, and he can send out to everybody who was here. Or to anybody. I mean, it's a Civil Air Patrol copyright material. It's not mine. Yeah.
I want to thank all of you for participating, from the standpoint that you're the first group. We need you now that you have a renewal in the 5 pillars to carry the message. So we'll get that PowerPoint out to you. And once again, Anime, I want to thank you. I think everybody, let's give her a great thank you for something that she has prepared and brought to us. And with that, I would say, thank you so much. And we will be in touch. We're going to rerun this next month for other people, or if anybody else would like to come back. I was sitting here going, you know, this is the second time I've heard Anime give this presentation, and I was saying to myself, I need to come back because I was picking up things. There's a lot there, and but this is a definition of who we are, who we wish to be. So everyone, thank you so much.